Okay, so people skills. We are continuing where we left off. We talked about how number one, when dealing with people, the main currency is emotions. The higher your emotional intelligence, the better your interpersonal relationships. We also talked about how managing your expectations as early as possible is a great way to avoid negative, disappointing experiences later, and that is crucial. So managing who is responsible for what, who has the authority for what, right from the start will save you a lot of headaches later. So make sure you follow that. And now we come to number three. People do business with people they like and trust. That's pretty self-evident, I think, so let's see. As good old Zig Ziglar has said, if people like you, they will listen to you. But if they trust you, they will do business with you. Now what does that mean? Well, it means that if you like somebody, you may not trust them. If you trust somebody, you may not like them. For example, if I pull a gun at you and I threaten to kill you, you might trust that I will do what I said I will do, but you're not going to like me. Conversely, you may like certain politicians because they're witty, they're funny, whatever, but you don't really trust them, right? Or you may like some celebrity or whatever the case, you know, somebody, I don't know, some celebrity, right, rock star, whatever, but you wouldn't trust them with your kids, now would you? So you see, those two can be separate. What we need is both of those things, because if people like you, they will listen to you. If they trust you, they will do business with you. We need both of those things. So let's talk about likability. Number one, we tend to like people who are similar to us, who have similar or the same values. That's one of the reasons why we might like somebody who we don't even know. I mean, there are certain, like, for example, any reality show. You don't really know the contestants or something, but you might like some of them because they have similarities to you. You may not know personally anybody in your favorite football team, but you may like them because they have certain similarities to you. You may be watching MMA and you have a certain fighter that you like, but you don't know him personally or anything like that, but you like them because they have similar values to you. The same is true for business. You may like somebody because they have same values or similarities with you. Or as cynics would say, I like you because we hate the same things. Now, we're not cynics, but let's say that you like a certain type of photography. A client might like the same type of photography, so they might hire you for that, or at least talk to you. Okay, so number one, we tend to like people who are similar to us, who have similar or the same values. Another good example of this would be, let's say you're on a vacation, you know, you're from London or somewhere and you're on a vacation to Sri Lanka, right? And you don't know anybody there, and then you are fan of Manchester United, for example, the football club, right? And you go there and then somebody's wearing the same jersey from the same club. All of a sudden you like them because they like the same football club like you do, right? Same football team. So we tend to like people instinctively because they have certain similarities. We tend to gravitate towards them. We also tend to like people who pay us compliments and who seem friendly and warm, not who flatter us, but who people, although sometimes some shallow people like flattering as well, but usually people prefer compliments versus flattery. Flattery is usually shallow compliments. But compliments, when somebody really likes you or compliments you, it's very hard not to like them, right? We like compliments. I mean, whether it's for our work, for our appearance, whatever it is. When people compliment you, you kind of tend to like them more. And number three, we tend to like people who are more positive, honest, and inspiring. Think about it. Chances are that unless you're a hell of a cynic, you're not going to like a negative person. Even cynics like positive people, even though they wouldn't admit it. And of course, if you're dishonest and it's obvious, probably people won't like you, because down the line they know they cannot trust you, so they won't like you because of that. And if you're boring, who likes boring people? People like inspiring people, right? People who inspire them. So we tend to like people who are similar to us, who have similar or the same values. We tend to like people who pay us compliments and who seem friendly and warm. We tend to like people who are more positive, honest, and inspiring. Now, can you be those things so that people may like you? But not because you want them for validation, but because this is part of your business or part of your personality. Because none of this has to be this genuine. It can be all genuine extension of who you are. Or maybe you already are like this and people like you. Right? Okay, let's talk about trust now. Talk about likability, let's talk about trust. The first rule of trust when it comes to business: nothing travels as fast as speed of trust. And there is actually a book from Stephen Covey Jr. called Speed of Trust. I would recommend you read that if you want to learn more. Now, what does it mean by nothing travels as fast as speed of trust? Well, think about it like this. When trust is high, speed goes up and the cost comes down of doing business. And conversely, when trust is low, speed comes down and cost goes up. And this is from his book actually, and he mentions a very interesting example there. 9/11, the terrorist bombing. Now they say that, I don't have personal experiences, but this is according to what people say, that before that incident happened, the trust was relatively high in the airports. So when you went there to check in and go and fly, the speed of doing business and doing all the checkups and everything was relatively fast. The speed was up, right? It was very fast. You would go through the whole process relatively quickly without too much trouble in most cases. And at the same time, the cost of maintaining the airport security and all that was relatively low compared to what it is today. And then conversely, when trust is low, speed comes down and cost goes up. And after the 9/11 bombing, what happened, right? Now the speed has come down. In other words, when you go through the checkout counter, to check your luggage and everything, you have to endure all kinds of random interrogations and probings and who knows what. And then of course the cost of all this security and monitoring all that and this extra manpower and surveillance, all that has gone up. Why? What's the variable that has changed? The trust, right? That's why when he says nothing travels as fast as speed of trust, that's what he means. I mean, think about it. Think about somebody you have a very good relationship with, somebody you really trust, and you're doing business with them. Can you imagine how it's usually very fast, because there's no suspicion, there's usually very fast in which you exchange information, in which you exchange whatever you need to in order to do business, and usually because of everything you exchange without checking and rechecking and suspicion, the overall cost of business goes down. But if the trust is low, so think of somebody you work with that you didn't trust. Let's say you are a photographer and you're hiring some makeup artist or somebody and you don't trust them. You got to call them up to show up on the shoot and you don't trust them that they'll show up, so you got to check them. So your time is wasted, your impulses are wasted, everything kind of goes up. The speed comes down, right? Everything is slower. You have to do all this rechecking, and the cost of rechecking and doing all of this goes up. The same is true when you're dealing with retouchers or when they're dealing with photographers. Constantly sending emails, are you going to be done? The deadline is approaching, you're not sending me any emails, I got to check that. It's frustrating, and so you get my point, right? Nothing travels as fast as speed of trust. So if you want to do good business, invest in trust. Any relationship is built or dies on trust. Even hostage negotiations, where you would think there's no trust, there is one element of trust. As long as the police believes that the terrorist will kill the hostage, As long as they trust that the hostage will die if they try something, they won't do anything, the police, right? So that's the only kind of level of trust. But you can imagine when trust is that low, how the cost goes up and the speed comes down of taking care of everything. But if all of a sudden there was no hostage negotiations and there was a person that police had trusted completely and they trusted police, then the other way around works as well, right? So the same is true for business. Invest in high trust in a relationship. Be likable and be trustworthy, and people will like doing business with you, and you will spend so little time doing, and it will reduce cost and won't take you very much time to do business. So it's definitely good investment. And as a side note, usually no trust means no sale. People don't trust you, they won't buy from you, they won't hire you to do business. So that's another element. Okay, how do we achieve trust, and what is trust really? What does it consist of? Well, there are two main pillars of trust, and those are trustworthy character and competence. Here's what I mean. So that's character and competence. Character, well, that's all about being transparent and authentic, being genuine in your dealings with others. Another way in which you can achieve trustworthy character is by having trustworthy reputation. If other people talk good things about you and that you have good character and you can be trusted, then you don't even have to do it yourself. By the time you contacted by the client, they will already trust you based on your reputation. If that's not there, then all you have to do is be transparent and authentic in your dealings with others. And that simply means don't create the environment for suspicion, instead create the environment for trust. You have that decision. So for example, a lot of times we have this kind of problem where we're not transparent, right? So a client comes to us and they ask us, how much will it cost and all this, and then you go through this elaborate, people sometimes go through this elaborate negotiating realm where they talk about, well, first show me the images, first tell me this, and then I will show you this, and then you think one thing about a person, but you don't say that, you say something else, and this will often lead to suspicion. Suspicion leads to distrust, and therefore it will reduce it will increase the time it takes to do everything, and it will also be a problem how much everything costs because you're spending all of this time. So what about competence? Well, that's the other element. It's not enough that they trust that you have good intentions. They gotta trust that you have the skills. Competence simply means the ability to do something successfully. Do what you say you're gonna do. That's how you build reputation of competence. If you want repeat business, you have to be able to perform and deliver on your promise, possibly more than that. Because, for example, I've seen people who say, well, yeah, sure, I can do whatever you hire me to do, whether it's a shoot or retouch, and then the client hires them and they don't do the job. They might sell that idea one time. They overpromise but underdeliver, but try doing it the second time, the third time. And if you do it too many times, the reputation spreads and you get the reputation of not competent and not trustworthy person, then nobody does business with you, right? So if you want to be good in terms of business, you have to be trustworthy. You have to develop trust, a reputation of trust. And the way you do that is by having trustworthy character and having competence. That Stephen Covey Jr., the one I quoted earlier, talks about speed of trust. He mentioned this really cool example where apparently he had an issue with his wife, who trusted his character implicitly. He was transparent and authentic. She was his wife, so she definitely trusted him from that point of view, right? But she had some kind of a surgery that needed to be done, and he had to hire a surgeon, because guess what? She wouldn't trust him to do the surgery. She trusts him with everything, but just not with surgery. Why? Because she doesn't trust his competence in the surgical procedures. See how they have to be both of those elements for somebody to actually do business with you? Think about it. So not only do they have to trust your intentions, they have to trust your ability to deliver, your competence. Now, how do you speed up trust? Well, first you trust them and then they trust you. That's the way you speed up the trust. So for example, a client comes to you, you first show them trust by not hiding anything, by being transparent and authentic. Usually like that, right? So if they ask you for a price, you should have something already prepared or deliver the response quickly without too much suspicion. And if there is some legitimate suspicion, you might ask them. But generally speaking, you want to be as transparent as possible. You want to make sure that they feel like they can trust you as soon as possible. When that happens, well, if they can trust you, then usually they will offer their trust to you if you have offered your trust to them. So first you trust them and then they trust you. That's the order of things. If you wait for the other way around, if you wait for them to show you trust before you can trust them, you're limiting yourself. Now, trusting everyone and trusting no one is equally faulty, right? You don't want to be a victim of scam. And what I'm advocating here is not paranoid distrust, in which case you don't trust anybody. That will paralyze you to do any kind of business. I'm not advocating blind trust, because that can get you into trouble. If you trust everybody, no matter what, that makes you naive. And you don't want to do that. For example, there are really dangerous environments where you don't want to do that. Like prison, right? If somebody drops a soap, you don't want to go and pick it up, right? And that's a dangerous environment to be naive. Let's just say that. What I'm advocating is smart trust. Use your instincts. Think about can you trust this person? How to do that, I'll explain in a minute. But smart trust is what will allow you to assess the person and then decide whether or not you can trust them. If you assess them really quickly and you show that you offer them your trust quickly, they will trust you in return quickly. And that's how you speed up the trusting process. Now the problem is that sometimes you will just make a wrong assumption. You will trust somebody and it will turn out that that's not a person you could trust. In my experience, if you're smart about who you trust, when that happens, it's usually very, very rare. And if you just distrust everybody, well, then you are limiting yourself to all the opportunities. For example, I maybe get 10-15% of people who I trusted and they didn't deliver. I delivered the work, they didn't pay me. But what I've discovered is that the rest of them did pay me, even though I did trusted them first and I did the work and I delivered the work and then they paid me. So what I ended up seeing is that if I were to distrust all of these people, what would end up happen is that I would leave it to myself of all the work that I could have done, and I may not be taking advantage of that one time, but I will in turn do more damage by not doing all the other work that I did based on trust. So think about it like that. Okay, so how do you develop smart trust? How do you know who to trust and who to not trust? Well, red flags. Red flag. A red flag is a warning of danger or a problem. So you got to watch out for red flags. Now, very important key point here to be made. If you're desperate, then this doesn't work. Here's why. You can be desperate and you can see the red flags in some client, and because you're desperate, you're not in a position to act upon the red flags, so you accept the job still. And you're walking into a lion's den, but you still choose to do it because you're desperate, right? So the only way red flags are really useful is if you are not desperate enough, but you are confident enough to act upon the red flags. That's the only time it really works. Example of this would be, I'm pretty sure you have done in your lifetime a job, you have applied for a job where things weren't perfect, you could sense that something weren't right, You know things weren't really good. You know that the guy that hired you or the business was kind of fishy, but you still went along and did it because you were desperate for money, right? So if you really want to benefit from red flags, you have to be able to act upon red flags. Otherwise, you need those two components: ability to act and ability to recognize red flags. If you only can act but you can't recognize them, then they take advantage of you. If you can recognize the red flags but not in a position to act, they take advantage of you. The way you succeed is by recognizing the red flags and being in a position to act upon the red flags and skip over and do another job. So, how do you spot the red flags? Well, number one, actions speak louder than words. Or as the Chinese proverb says that I like to use, talk doesn't cook rice. Watch what people do, not what they say. Now, sometimes, first impression, you don't have a lot of time, you have to trust their word. So you can give them the benefit of a doubt the first time. But then if what they said they're gonna do, they didn't do, that's a red flag. Even if it's a small thing, and be especially careful about small things, and here's why. If they say that they will call you in 2 hours and they call you in 4 hours or 3 hours, that's a red flag. They're not punctual. They're not respecting themselves enough to raise their standards to be punctual and respect your time. Now, why is that important? Now, you can survive if they didn't call you, right away and they call you an hour later. But that's a red flag. Why? Because it's a small thing. Small things are usually the indication of bigger things to come. So next time the client might tell you something like, I will pay you tomorrow, and they pay you 3 days after. Or I will pay you all the money and they pay you half. Or something like that. Or they say they will, they say something about themselves that just isn't true, and their actions don't reflect what they said about themselves or what they're gonna do. So just actions speak louder than words. If it's small things, trust me, later you will see the exact same behavior, only in bigger things. So watch out for small things, and watch that the minute you start communicating with them. That will save you, trust me. But again, you have to be in a position to act, otherwise this does not apply. Number two, listen to your gut feeling, your instinct. Usually it will tell you the things that your brain may not comprehend, but your gut feeling, your instinct will tell you something's not right. Listen to that gut feeling. It will tell you the right thing to do before you even realize it. Okay? So learn to listen to your gut feeling. And number three, always, if you have the option, see what other people are saying about this person, this job, this interview, this business, this project. What is the reputation? What is the word on the street, so to speak? No, in the gangster circles and in the gang circles, that's the only thing you can trust, right? The word on the street. That's solid. So always pay attention to that. Okay, now let me talk about why else the trust is very important. Now, trust, especially a high trust, is something you develop over time. So patience is also a key here. If you do the right things, small and little by little, eventually you will develop very high trust. So when the trust is very high in a relationship, you can make mistakes and people will still get your meaning because they believe in your good intentions, right? So for example, you can make some kind of a mistake, not intentional, but you made some mistake and you said something the wrong way, or you wrote something the wrong way, and guess what? If you have a high trust, people will get your meaning. They know from previous experiences that you mean well, you don't mean anything bad. Maybe you said it the wrong way. Well, they won't make a big deal out of it. They might mention it, they might not, but usually it's not a problem. And here you see me doing the same thing. You've seen me spelling something the wrong way, right? It's not an intentional mistake. I do those things often. But let me ask you, do you trust me less because of this? If you don't, if you know that I have good intentions. Why is that? Well, that's because I've tried to build a high level of trust with all the interactions we had before. So the same thing is true for our relationships. If you have a high enough trust, then small things can go by unnoticed. You don't want to make constant mistakes all the time, but if you do make a unintentional mistake here and there, it's not a big deal. And to tell you the truth, we're all human. We all make those small mistakes, so it makes the whole kind of process much less stressful. And of course, conversely, when the trust is low in a relationship and suspicion dominates, then even the small mistakes will be blown out of proportion, and can be seen as a personality conflicts. You probably have seen that. Let's say somebody really violates your trust, like deeply. Somebody, and this is especially true in a relationship, like romantic relationships. Let's say somebody cheats on you. No matter what they say after that, no matter if they text somebody or something, even if you make up, that will always be a red flag, right? And small things will be blown out of proportion before you know it. And the same is true. I'm using that as an example because some of you might have that experience, so you know what I'm talking about. And when it happens in a business relationship, it's a similar thing. When somebody really violates your trust by not paying you or doing something like that, not delivering the work, then even small things that they say, you don't really trust them anymore, right? So they can be blown out of proportion. Even spelling mistakes, like if you don't trust somebody, the trust is very low or there's no trust, they send you an email, and even the low, some kind of a, they've misspelled the word or they've changed the word and it changes the meaning a little bit, they will blow that out of proportion and you will find yourself in a hot trouble. But if the trust is high, you can get away with murder. But I'm not recommending it, it's just an expression. And that's another reason why trust, especially trust over time that you build to a high level of trust, is so important. And in a long-term relationships with clients, this is crucial. And at the end of the day, we are still dealing with people and emotions, right? So just remember that people are very sensitive, and relatively small actions can have big ramifications in the future. So you got to be very careful. You have to have a good emotional intelligence to begin with. And see you in the next one.